Hello, everyone, and welcome to Resistance Live. It is the 10th of March, 2025, and what a weekend it has been. I hope you're all doing well. We have to talk this morning about something that happened late last night in New York City. I'm really terribly disturbed about this. I've already made my own phone calls this morning to my representative and my senator, so we're going to talk about it. But lots of other moving pieces today in terms of the administration, including new threats of tariffs. So sit tight because we have an awful lot to cover. First things first, today for our visually challenged viewers, I'm wearing a black top with a black blazer over top. My hair is pulled back. I'm a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty blonde-haired woman, and I am sitting in my office, as always, in front of my bookshelf and my yellow utility cart and the big cushy chair. And I'm coming to you, as always, from occupied Muncie, Lenape, and Mohican land. Okay, so late last night in Columbia student housing, Mahmoud Khalil, who was the chief negotiator for the Columbia student protests on behalf of the Palestinian people, was detained by ICE without a warrant. Mahmoud Khalil has a green card. He is married to a U.S. citizen. His wife is 8 months pregnant. At the time of the protests, he was here on a student visa, but he has since obtained a green card, and he is here legally, which should not matter if you care about human rights. But just first things first, for the sake that we are clear on this, he is lawfully inside the United States. He has a green card, okay? ICE apparently waited until he and his wife were on their way into their apartment building. They pushed their way in after him. They threatened to detain his wife if she didn't leave them alone. And then they arrested him without a warrant. His lawyer got on the phone with ICE. When she asked about a warrant, they hung up on her. He has since been what is essentially disappeared. No one knows where he is. Initially, ICE told his wife that he was being held at a facility in Elizabeth, New Jersey. She went to try and see him, and he was not there. This morning, there is some suggestion based on the databases of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, of the ICE databases, that he may be being held now at a facility in Jena, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, Louisiana. However, it's unclear. And at this moment, there is no information that is confirmed that that is where he is located. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, has since made a statement because of all the outrage that has come up around this particular issue that the State Department intends to revoke the green cards of anyone who is protesting in a way that the U.S. deems inappropriate. They do not have the authority to do that. The only entity inside the United States government that has the authority to rescind a green card is a judge. Marco Rubio, the State Department, ICE, does not get to unilaterally decide that a green card resident is unilaterally going to have their green card revoked because they said something that the United States government doesn't like. In the United States, people have a First Amendment right to protest. That includes people here who are here on green cards. We have a right to freedom of speech that extends to non-resident citizens. They're not actually citizens, but like non-citizen residents of the United States, rather. This is, I'm just going to say it straight out, something of a trial balloon, in my opinion. They have purposefully chosen someone who was targeted by far right-wing protesters who were saying on Twitter, X, that he should be arrested and deported, okay? They have chosen someone who is perceived to be controversial because they think that what that means is that average, everyday American citizens are not going to rise up and protest. So let me just explain something to everyone here, okay? If the Trump administration can disappear someone for speaking out in a way that they disagree with, they can do it to literally any of us. It does not matter that he's not a U.S. citizen. Doesn't matter that he's married to a U.S. citizen. Doesn't matter that he has a green card. Wouldn't even matter if he was here on a student visa, okay? Or if he was here, by the way, on undocumented status. If they can do it to anyone, they can do it to you and me. This situation is one where they are very clearly waiting to see what kind of reaction they get from people in the U.S. And so my first phone calls this morning were to LaMonica McIver, my representative, to Cory Booker, and to Andy Kim, demanding to know what they were going to do about it. I had a very favorable reception, as I always do because I love her, at LaMonica McIver's office, where the person who answered the phone literally wrote down Mahmoud Khalil's name, told me they were going to discuss it with my rep. I, again said, thank you for walking out of the State of the Union last week, because I always like shower them with praise about what they're doing right when I'm asking for something. But this is a situation where we must get loud. And lots of people recognize this. There is an emergency protest being held today if you are in New York City at Federal Plaza this afternoon. I would encourage you to go if you are at all free, because this is something that essentially requires the shutdown of, anything that we can shut down at this point. If you happen to be in Louisiana, you're anywhere near Jena, Louisiana, Jena, or Jena, Louisiana, however it's pronounced, please consider getting your people together and showing up to protest. But this is something that we must get loud about. It is incredibly imperative today that you call your rep and your senators about this. Tell them you want Mahmoud Khalil released. Because what they are doing right now is showing us what they are willing to do if they disagree with the free speech of anyone. And that, by the way, has enormous implications for anyone, anywhere, who has ever stood up in protest to Donald Trump. This is an extremely slippery slope. And it is illegal, like beyond illegal, what they're doing. It's a violation of the First Amendment. It's a violation of immigration law. It's a violation of human rights law. It's a violation of the UN Charter on Human Rights. And in every instance, the response that we are getting from the Trump administration is that they're going to do basically whatever the hell that they want. So as for the question about why would they move him to Louisiana, I'm just going to tell you why. Because they are moving him somewhere where he cannot easily be located. And in my prior experience doing work involving family separation under the first Trump administration, one thing that they were known to have done then that I personally witnessed them doing was moving high-profile individuals around from detention facility to detention facility so that nobody could actually locate them. Their lawyers couldn't locate them. Family members couldn't locate them. Protesters couldn't locate them. Immigration rights advocates couldn't locate them. This is something that they have done. Okay. So the fact that they have moved him to Louisiana away from his wife, they won't tell his lawyer where he's being held. This is classic authoritarian disappearance of individuals, and if he's in Louisiana now and that's been identified, doubtless they will move him again. All right. This is a classic authoritarian response to attempts to suppress speech. And they have chosen him because they assume that U.S. citizens, white folks, people who think that, maybe the protests at Columbia were a little too much. I don't happen to be one of those people. Won't care. But this is what I'm going to say to all of you here in this audience, okay? Whatever side of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict you find yourself on, I have very strong feelings about this, but I'm just going to say this for the sake of saying it. You should care about this, because this is the weaponization of the government to suppress free speech. And it frankly doesn't matter what the issue is about. It's the actions that are being taken that matter. This is about as unconstitutional as it gets. And if they don't get pushback from us, they're going to continue doing it. And the next people they will do it to will be like journalists, American citizens, right? It's, trans folks. So just please be very clear on what's happening here. All right. They are intentionally trying to desensitize people to what they are doing. And I said this morning on Blue Sky, and I'm going to say it again here, okay? Family separation should have been the end of this. We should have been having very serious discussions about disbanding ICE after family separation went down. But people didn't like the idea of that because it bothered them. Okay, we're now in a situation where ICE is being used as a rogue military force to round up people who are lawfully in this country, which, by the way, means that ICE doesn't have jurisdiction over them. And seeking to disappear them. They may deport him. I don't know. Nobody knows at this point, but I will just tell you something. If you don't get loud about this, I just want you to know they're coming for the rest of us next. Okay. And this is something where you must call your representative and your senators about this immediately. If you are in New York, show up to protest. If there's a protest on behalf of Mahmoud Khalil anywhere near where you live, you need to show up for that. Because this is about basic First Amendment rights. And we need to be very, very loud about it. Okay, I do want to mention one other thing that is like deeply disturbing in the context of this in the last 24 to 48 hours, which is that there are indications now as well that Elon Musk and the Trump administration are looking at ActBlue for, like, they're claiming that there's criminal activity being money laundering being perpetrated through ActBlue. For people who don't know like how ActBlue works, it's essentially a payment processor for donations to Democrats. What they are trying to do is cut off the means by which any one of us could donate to a Democratic candidate. Now, there are other ways to donate out there. It's certainly not the only platform. But all that said, it is the most robust. It is the one that has the data. You want to know how you get all those text messages to your phone during election season? It's because of ActBlue. So if ActBlue is shut down, if what you really wanted to do was stop the prospect of Democrats being funded to be elected, you would go after ActBlue. And so there is a huge escalation right now in an attempt to stop Democratic protections and the funding of like Democratic Party candidates. Okay. This stuff, like, again, I got to remind you, Trump won. We had a ton of trial balloons. Let's float this horrible fascist idea and see what kind of a reaction we get. And if the reaction was protests, loud noise on social media, flooded phone calls to the Hill. I'm going to say this, by the way, do not neglect to call if you have MAGA representatives. Like, you need to make those phone calls probably more insistently than if you were represented by Democrats right now. Okay. This is the kind of stuff that they are testing right now to see what the American public will tolerate. So we need to get very, 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 very loud about this stuff. Okay. I want to talk about the Tesla takedown protests because those two are a sign of how things are going right now. Tesla takedown has spread like you wouldn't believe, okay? Every Saturday now, there are huge protests. There was a massive turnout at the Tesla dealership in Manhattan this weekend, and people were arrested because they sat down inside the Tesla dealership, and the NYPD arrested people, and not in the most gentle fashion. If you haven't seen the video, I encourage you to go find it. They arrested folks for trespassing on public property. The NYPD has arrested people for protesting before. It has held them when it was not supposed to. There's a whole long history of this. But please be aware that, you know, there's also photographs of like huge lines of local law enforcement now out in front of Tesla dealerships. That should not stop you from protesting. I'm just going to say it. Please make sure that you have safety coordinators at the protests that you are attending. But they know that this is having a direct impact now, not just on policy, but also on Elon Musk. Plus, Twitter is down now for the second time today. Tesla takedown is having a very direct impact, not just on Tesla stock, but also on the resale market for Tesla. And so this, by the way, is directly impacting Elon Musk and his wealth. These are very significant protests. They are a sign of what people power can do to push back against oligarchs. I will paraphrase something that Mariam Kaba said about this over the weekend, which I happen to agree with wholeheartedly, which is that some of this is about flipping your idea about power. Because if he needs us, right? He needs people to buy his cars in order for his wealth to stay where it is, right? If we understand that without us, he doesn't have that power, he will not be the world's wealthiest man. He will not have unlimited funds. If we understand that we have that power within us, that changes how we feel about the direct actions that we're taking. So it is really critical at this point to stay the course. These protests are incredibly well organized. Again, I have to shout out Alex Winter, who's doing like a phenomenal job. They're worldwide now. Please, please, please continue to get involved. All right, continue to get involved. A couple of other details about events in New York City. Andrew Cuomo has announced a run for the mayor of New York City. This was expected. But I do want to remind everyone that Andrew Cuomo is a serial sexual predator. He was accused by a large number of women, the most vocal of whom is Lindsay Boylan, and you should follow her on Blue Sky, about sexual harassment in his offices. This was not a one-time thing, not that it would matter. It was a long-standing pattern, and he had both his brother and his sister, his brother who at the time was on CNN and remember was fired for the conflict of interest in terms of his reporting, weaponizing their platforms to make his accusers sound crazy. He was sued in court for some of these violations, and he went after the pap smear medical records of some of his accusers to try to prove that they were promiscuous and therefore deserved it. He is not someone who should ever be in a position of power again. And one of the things that we need to get very, very loud about is that it is unacceptable to have one corrupt politician of, like one of the largest, most significant cities in the country, the most populous city in the country, replaced by another corrupt politician. That is not a solution. Okay. So Andrew Cuomo needs to be defeated, and primaries are coming up. New Yorkers, I know you know this, but please, please, please don't vote for Andrew Cuomo. As for what's happening in the Eric Adams case, I'm going to remind you all that Judge Ho appointed someone to argue against the dismissal of the claims against Eric Adams because Trump's DOJ and the defense attorneys were working in concert to try to get them kicked out because they wanted Eric Adams to have no basis to refuse to allow, wait for it, here we are again, ICE from raiding New York City housing projects and facilities. They wanted, in exchange for his cooperation, to let ICE run amok in New York City. They collaborated illegally to dismiss these charges. So we are now waiting for that newly appointed attorney to present arguments about why the case should not be dismissed. And this is one way of Judge Ho protecting the sanctity of the judicial system. All right. So again, we will have to wait and see what happens with that. That is still pending. Okay. Other kind of difficult news today. Some of you saw that over the weekend, Donald Trump signed an executive order punishing Perkins Coie, the law firm, for essentially representing Democrats in 2016. He's already done something similar with regard to Covington and Burling, which is another old school white shoe law firm that has done work on behalf of some of Trump's perceived enemies. All right. And they are weaponizing the government against these law firms. They're demanding that the EEOC investigate them for diversity and inclusion programs, right? They're recommending that the U.S. attorney, the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, who, by the way, is a deeply problematic individual, get involved in potentially prosecuting these law firms for doing things that Donald Trump doesn't like. This, again, is the weaponization of the government, not just to shut down free speech, but to interfere in the judicial system. And, this has the potential, because of government contracts and other things, to have a really adverse impact on these particular law firms. Again, I'm going to remind you that there is pushback happening in lots of ways in all sorts of arenas when these executive orders are coming down. There will be a lawsuit filed against this. I can guarantee it. But I also want everybody to recognize this for what it is. It is the weaponization of government against perceived enemies. And we knew that this was coming. Yes, it is a flail. These are not well-written EOs. They are not likely to stand up in court. All that said, and you're also litigating against two of the most prominent law firms in the country with incredibly reputable and skilled lawyers. All that said, the gesture itself is designed to silence. The gesture itself is designed to say to law firms who may be considering representing people who Trump doesn't like, don't do that or you'll suffer the consequences. Again, very traditional autocratic move, deeply concerning. Okay. On the tariff front, in case you missed it, the stock markets have been plummeting again this morning. And Canada, hi Canadians, I know we have a lot of Canadians who watch here. Canada has this weekend nominated for the Liberal Party Mark Carney as their candidate to succeed Justin Trudeau. Carney gave a very powerful speech over the weekend about the fact that Canada would always be Canada. There's no way in hell they're going to be the 51st United States. But this morning, there's additional pushback from some of the regional PMs. So the Ontario Premier, not long ago, we're talking an hour ago, said that in the event that Trump escalates the tariffs against Canada, which, by the way, he has threatened to do this morning, Ontario is going to cut off the electricity supply to the United States. They're already doing retaliatory tariffs that are going to increase the cost of electricity to 1.5 million Americans. But I just want everybody to get prepared that this is getting very ugly, and it's all Donald Trump's fault. And I just want everybody to think about what the consequences are going to be if electricity is cut off to the northern United States or New England, because Donald Trump insists on playing this completely unethical, unjustified game of chicken with one of our former allies. So buckle up. It's going to get very, very rough if this continues along the way that Donald Trump keeps doing it. And I just have to say one other thing here. We talked on Friday about the fact that Trump seems to not have any logic to all of this that, last week was a very bad week for him in terms of like tariffs, no tariffs, no tariffs now in April, no tariffs against Mexico. And, was flailing as well. Like Ukraine is our enemy. Now Ukraine is our friend. Maybe I'll sanction Russia. Maybe I won't. All this sort of stuff creates a lack of reliability from an economic perspective, from a foreign relations perspective, from an international policy perspective, none of which is good for the United States. And so this is a good opportunity to educate people that if we lose electricity, God forbid, in all of New England or, like Michigan, to educate people about why this is happening, okay? Because the consequences are going to be immediate and dire from the standpoint of how this is going to play out in the event that it continues to escalate in the way that it's currently being signaled. And people are going to need to understand that the reason why this is happening is because of Donald Trump, not anybody else, not immigrants, not Canada, not like, our former allies, because of Donald Trump. And, the local impact in communities that, in some instances voted majority Trump, is going to be a chance for that moment of cognitive dissonance where like, we're going to have an obligation to talk to people and make sure that they understand what side of the fence they need to stand on. I'll just add one other thing. There's a lot of noise being made over the weekend about the idea that people who are showing up at their town halls and expressing their opinions about what has happened are paid protesters, right? Once again, they're like spreading these horrific anti-Semitic Jewish conspiracy theories that we're all being paid by George Soros, et cetera, et cetera. God knows I would be retired on a beach somewhere right now if that was the case. And, one of the things that I want people to be very mindful of here is that they know that the pushback that they are getting is now starting to come from Republican strongholds. This is one reason why the GOP has recommended, for instance, that House of Representatives members stop holding town halls. They know that this is not the Democrats doing this, and they're trying to shut down the complaints by claiming that it's all paid, seated, astroturfed protesters. It's not. And part of what is going to need to happen going forward is that folks are going to need to get very, very loud where they live. Again, we've been talking about the point of local organizing here for a very long time. We've been talking about it in earnest since the election in November. This is one reason why. We need to make sure that we've got our local organizing ready to go when it's time to stand up. So I want to remind you all, please be in communication with like your local community pod, with your local immigrants' rights organizations, with your local LGBTQ rights organizations, with your local abortion funds. Make sure that you are on mailing lists, because there will come a moment where like, even if you haven't done a Tesla Takedown protest yet, you're going to need to stand up at a local town hall or go protest at your representative's local office on the sidewalk. Okay. All of this is going to be very critical in the coming days and weeks and months. And it's getting really ugly and gross. And, I don't think there's a lot of patience out there for this any longer. I will just tell you that in some of our course training over the last few days, there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that Trump voters are souring. They didn't vote for this. That in people's local communities, there are conversations happening now with Trump voters who are scared because of Social Security, because of Medicaid, because of the threats of cuts, because they see Elon Musk running around with a hatchet and cutting programs that they need to survive. So this is a moment to really start to make sure that you are in community and in communication with people where you live, because we're going to need to get loud. And, the other thing is their safety in numbers. So lots of love to all of you. Please remember, if you like what we do here, like this broadcast, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're watching on the replay, drop me a comment, because it tells the algorithm that you like what we're doing here. And you can, of course, share this to anybody you know who may benefit from it. And I'll remind you also, please support this broadcast if it is within your bandwidth to do so. You can become a paid subscriber over at patreon.com/resistancelive. That helps me to pay my team and do this work. So thank you all so much. Much appreciation to all of you. I will be here at regular time tomorrow, and try to enjoy your Monday, folks. But please, make those phone calls on behalf of Mahmoud Khalil. Please be loud about that and be in community with folks where you live. All right. Lots of love, everyone. I will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.